Okay, everybody, we're going to start something new. Yes, we're going to we're going to explore the Pachad Yitzchok on Purim as a hachana, obviously. Also, it's timely, and we're going to dedicate this session Li'ilei Nishmas Mordechai Yisrael Tzvi ben Moshe Aaron. The neshama should have an aliyah. We're going to do the first essay in the Purim edition, and for some reason, in this edition, they're called Inyanim. So we're going to do Inyan Aleph. Okay, here goes. So, Bilam, he had a prophecy, and in his prophecy, in Numbers, it brings the verse, Reishis Goyim Amalek V'achriso Adei Oved. Reishis. Reishis is a fantastic word. Reishis is the word that the Torah uses to kick off. It says Bereishis, in the beginning. And Chazal, Rashi brings so many beautiful Chazals on there. Very, very important. Reishis has a very, very deep significance. And for some reason, that word, that appellation, is associated with Amalek. We say Reishis Goyim Amalek. Reishis, Amalek is the first of nations. It's we have to see what that means. V'achriso, and his end, Adei Oved, is utter, eternal destruction. So Bilam says, there's two parts to this verse. There's the beginning and the end. The beginning is Reishis Goyim Amalek. Amalek is the first of nations. And his end, the end of the verses, and his end is total obliteration. Okay. Seifa dehachkra, the end of this verse, kachu mitbaresh. This is how it's explained. Afa pishet kufat acharit hayamim hu tkufa kazo. Even though in the period of the end of days, when everything is rectified, will be a period such an era, sheyesh batzad tikunu mot haolam, that there will be whatever rectification is possible for the nations of the earth. They will have received their rectification then, and the only thing that will be standing at the time of rectification are those that are rectified. Mikol makom, nevertheless, le'amalek, in the case of Amalek, ein shum tikun gam betkufat achrit hayamim, they are bereft of any sort of rectification, even in that ultimate level of rectified reality when anything that could be fixed will be fixed. And therefore, they will not be there at the end of time. Okay? That's the end of the, meaning he's explaining now the end of the verse. The end of the verse says, Ve'achrito, and its end, which is a reference to the end, Adei Oved, is total obliteration. Okay, so now, how do we understand the beginning of the verse? Umikivan shebetkufa zo, shel acharit hayamim, lo yimatzeh shum davar she'einu mitukan, since there won't be anything left or around at the end of days that is not rectified, harei muchrach, therefore it is clearly proven, shetkufat acharit, therefore it is, it must be, shetkufat acharit hayamim hi tkufat ibadon Amalek, that the era of the end of days is an era that is the total destruction of Amalek. Meaning there are two ways that you could identify the end of days. The days when anybody who has rectification is rectified, or the days where Amalek is completely gone. Okay, and why is this? Well, let's look at the beginning of the verse. The verse itself explains clearly why. What is the reason that Amalek has no rectification at the end of time? This is a natural extension of the fact that they are the first of the nations. Since they were the first of nations, and we have not explained what that means yet, we have to explain, meaning because of they are the first of nations, in the end they will have no rectification, they will be totally gone. What does it mean that they were the first of nations? The reason they are called the first of nations, that appellation is referring to the fact ki Amalek hi ha'uma harishona sheba'a lilachem b'Yisrael. It was the first nation that came to attack Israel. Right. So on the pashut level, and we'll see that this is unsatisfactory, we have to explain what it really means, but we've taken a verse in the prophecy of Bilam, and we've said the words say, Amalek is the first of nations, and his end is total obliteration. And we explained that his end is total obliteration means that by the end of the world, he will have been totally obliterated. He has no rectification. Right. Why? Because he is the first of nations. And what is the first of nations? Because he was the first of all the nations to attack Israel when they came on the scene. So what we're saying is, since they were the first to attack Israel, for some reason they're given a special status, and their punishment is that there will be no rectification. We have not explained really why, and what is the innate relationship between the first fact and the second fact, but so far we're building, okay? So the pasuk says, Reshit Goyim Amalek, the first of nations is Amalek, V'achritu Adei Aved, and their end is total destruction. What that means is, since they were the first nation to attack Am Yisrael, they will have absolutely no rectification. In the end of time, they'll be totally obliterated ultimately from reality. Okay. Mefurosh Efa B'lashon HaKatuv, therefore it is explained somehow, on some level, in the language of the verse, Ki mipnei zeh, because of this fact, the Amalek Haya Harishon Lilachem B'Yisrael, that they were the first nation to engage in military battle with Israel, mipnei kach, because of this, ein lo takana, he has no ability to be fixed. Afilu b'tkufat achrit hayamim, even at the end of times where anything that has any ability to be fixed gets its rectification. Reshit goyim Amalek v'achrito adei aved. So mipnei, because shehu haya rishon, just because he was the first, bil melchemet hagoyim ub'tinagdutam, the first to express the wars of the non-Jews, the wars of the nations of the world, and their contrarian position to the existence of Am Yisrael, just because they were the first to express that. L'chein lo yeh lo tikun. That is the reason why it doesn't get a rectification. What does apples and oranges have to do with each other? Ve'afilu bizman sheyimatzeh tikun lekilkulim shel kol hagoyim u'milchamoteim. Even at a time where, if there was any nation that exists at some point, they made us miserable on some level. They either they tried to be a stumbling block against our achieving our potential, meaning on the level of nation, they held us back from doing our mission, or they tried to attack us. Right? Yeah. Anybody who gets a rectification later on, they will have touched some of that. They will get the rectification, and somehow, because Amalek was the first, they don't get any sort of rectification. Right. The Ma'amar Zeh in the following essay, Titparesh Mashmoto Shel Shaychutzu, we will try to explain the connection between these two facts of Amalek being of the First Nations, and I don't mean the ones from North America, right? And not having any rectification, La'atid Lavo. Okay, that was Aleph. Great kickoff. Bet. Okay, so now the first engagement that Amalek had with Am Yisrael, or rather that Am Yisrael had with Amalek, is mentioned in this week's parsha in Beshalach, right? It's at the end of Beshalach, after Am Yisrael. It's mamish, a newborn child, right? Hashem just proclaimed B'ni B'chor Yisrael. It is their birthday. They've emerged. There's no such thing like it. Now there's a nation that for the first time ever represents God's interests down here on earth, that Hashem has a player on the board, right? That it's impossible to see the Jews and not understand that God has an agenda and He is involved in human affairs. So that immediately triggered the engagement with Amalek. Those are the last words of Parshat Beshalach. And then the next Parsha is Parshat Yisro, and it opens up with the words, Vayishma Yitro, and Jethro heard. And he heard something that brought him to Am Yisrael, etc., right? And that is the whole parsha of Kabbalah Sator, or actually of Matan Torah. So Chazal say right over there, the verse says, Vayishma Yisro, and Jethro heard. And they say, Ma Shama Yisro, Ma Shama Uba. What did he hear? Rashi says, what did he hear? That he came. So, the Medrash answers, Kriyat Yam Suf, U'Mechiat Amalek, the splitting of the sea and the destruction of Amalek. So now all the other nations also saw the splitting of the sea, right? Okay, so the Chacham say on this, they quote a verse in Mishlei, and it says, the verse says, Leitz Take, a leitz is a mocker or a clown, somebody who makes fun of things and destroys the significance of things in culture by mocking them, right? A letz take, a letz, you must strike, upeti, and a fool, yarim, you should lift. Okay? So Parshat Mechiat Amalek Smucha hi leParshat Vayishma Yisro. The story in the Chumash of the telling of the story of the Battle of Amalek is right next to, it's juxtaposed to the parsha of Yitro responding to that which he heard and coming to Am Yisrael, and the Amru al Zeh Chachamim, and the sages say on this, let's take, let's take, upeti yarim, a mocker you should strike, and a fool you can uplift. And that's the verse in Mishlei, and Chazal mention, they comment on this. Let's take the mocker you should strike Zamalek. Right. This is the prescription for dealing with Amalek. Upeti Yarim, and a fool will be uplifted. Zeyitra. This is actually Jethro. Kilomar, that is to say, Ein mefalto shel Amalek mo'elet lo Amalek atzmo. When you strike the mocker, you are uplifting the fool. What does that mean? That means that striking the mocker, over here the mocker, Chazal is telling us, it is referring to Amalek. There is nothing good for Amalek by being struck. Meaning whenever you strike Amalek, you would think normally when you strike something, that's something getting its rectification. Here, by striking Amalek, Amalek does not get the rectification. Wow. Only the person who observes the strike gets the rectification. Wow. Meaning in striking Amalek, you can't even fix it. You can fix everybody else, but you can't fix it. Okay? So, there is no benefit to the fall of this particular let's, except for those who observe it being struck. But not to him himself. And the reason for this fact is that is indeed what it means. Meaning, Amalek cannot benefit at all by being struck. No striking will ever, you can pummel Hamas, but they won't stop. But when you finally destroy them, other people will learn that you mean business and you don't tolerate Hamas. Okay? Meaning there's nothing, they're not capable of tshuva. Okay? This is the problem with being a mocker. You cannot give him musar. You cannot straighten him out by giving him rebuke.
Let alone negotiate.
Oh, that's for sure. You're just giving space in your reality for him. We need an explanation here. Why is it that a mocker, there's no way to fix a mocker, and how do we assign this status of mockery to Amalek? Okay? So we have another floor that we're laying in our structure right now. Okay. Gimel. There's actually laws, the halachot of leitzanut, what constitutes leitzanut and when it is appropriate to use it. And you know what the Gemara says? It says a crazy thing, amazing thing. It says, kol litzanuta asira. All forms of mockery are prohibited. There's nothing good about being a mocker. You would think at least mock the things that deserve mocking. What's wrong with Monty Python when they're making fun of the people that actually deserve to be made fun of? But the Torah tells you cannot use leitzanut at all. It is detrimental for yourself to use it. However, there is one occasion where it's okay. Chutz mileitzanuta d'avodah zarah. Whenever it comes to mocking idol worship. When it comes to idol worship, the appropriate way of battling idol worship is specifically to use the toolkit of the let's. Now, how do we understand this? This is very difficult.
You should mock an idol worshiper?
Yes, you can You can mock idol worship specifically with leitzanut. That's the only time that it is appropriate for somebody to use leitzanut for a good thing. Otherwise, it is totally, totally evil. And is it not clear? The heter zeh leitzanut, this ability that we give you, this when something is. I'm sorry, I'm searching for an English word. When the opposite of this. What would you call the noun? This heter.
Permit.
Okay, this permit, right? This license, this that of leitzanut. This where leitzanut is permitted. In this one case of against avodah zarah, nemarhu b'chol pratav shel tzad hara, debevadei muter litlotzetz mikol mashu shara. So he says, why is it that specifically you need a heter, you need to be permitted specifically in the case of avodah zarah to use leitzanut, whereas everywhere else it is totally, totally asur. You would think that you should be able to use mockery against anything that is evil at all. Anything that's twisted or perverted, pointed out through mockery. The imkain. If it is true that really you may use mockery for anything evil, why is it the Chazal limited the expression of how to be used for good, specifically in the case right, of the example was Avodah Zarah. What is it about? What are Chacham telling us about the nature of leitzanud, that you're allowed to use it only for Tamak Avodah Zarah? V'amaftech le'inyan zeh, and the key to understanding this concept, nimtzahu b'dvar shel Rabbeinu Yonah, they are to be found in the words and the explanation of Rabbeinu Yonah Gon ala katuv on the pasuk mitzaref lekesef v'kor lezav v'ish lefi mahalalo. Okay, so this, one second, I'm just going to tell you where it is. I don't remember if it's in Kohelet or yeah, it's also in Mishlei. Okay, it's actually in the same chapter. Okay, so the verse in Mishlei says as follows. It says, mitzaref lekesef, to smelt a refinement of silver, v'kor lezav, and the crucible for gold, v'ish lefi mahalalo, and a man according to that which he praises. Okay, well the truth is, on the face of it, v'ish lefi mahalalo, and a man according to his praises. A man according to his praises. That's how we're going to translate. And the question is, do we mean how he is praised or how he praises? Okay, but there is a verse in Mishlei, and it says, v'ish lefi mahalalo, and a man, right, a silver is refined to the degree that it has been refined, and it refines a silver, the smelting, and the crucible for the refinement of gold, and a man according to his praises. So this is what Rabbeinu Yonah, this is how Rabbeinu Yonah addresses it. Dilechora, pirush hakatuv hu da'ish nikar mitoch ofen hahila shebnei adam mahalim oto. It seems to be on the face of it, the verse is saying that how do you identify a person? In the manner of which the people, his associates, praise him. How people talk about him and how they praise him will give you a good indication of who that person is. Okay? Ulezeba Rabbeinu Yonah. And according to, right, regarding this simple explanation that you would assume when you see the verse, Rabbeinu Yonah comes, lahotzi miperish zeh, to take it out, take the verse out from this understanding. Umevar, and he explains, the ish lefi mahalalo, a man according to his praise, hainu mitoch masha adam mehalel. He's saying that you know how you identify a person? Based on what that person himself extols. Meaning, you listen to what a guy says is really, really great and awesome. And that tells us what's important to him. And what is important to a person is where he is mevatel himself to something that he finds, meaning what he serves, that which is greater than him. And that's his value. And that tells us about him. Okay? So, V'zeh leshon shel Rabbeinu Yonah. This is the quote, the golden words of Rabbeinu Yonah. Im hu mishabech hama'asim hatovim. If this individual praises the good deeds and the sages and the righteous ones, Teda, you should know, ubachanta, and you have shown him to be ki ish tovu, he's a good man. V'shorish hatzedek nimtza bo, and the root of righteousness is to be found in this person. V'gomer, etc. V'im yitachen, and if it is possible, sheish biyado avonot nistarim, let's say he has hidden evils, hidden sins that you don't know about, you should still know. Aval me'ohavei hatzedeku, he is a lover of righteousness. Meaning, regardless of whatever personal failings he has, the things that are important to him, that he aspires to, are the things that he praises. V'hameshabech ma'asim megunim, somebody who praises lowly actions, o mehala rishayim, he praises the wicked, hu harasha hagamor, he is truly the wicked person. Somebody, you should are encouraged to look well into Bilshon Hazav in the golden language of Rabbeinu Yonah, Kolomer, that is to say, Im anu baim lahamid lemivcha. Let's say you want to stand to analyze, you want to determine the insides of a person, as afyo, the personality, shala adam, of a particular individual. Ika hasheilahi, the main question that you have to determine, tnuat hahit batlut shelo, the movement of his ability, where he is mevatel himself, where he nullifies himself, to what realities does he make himself small and hold to be big over himself? To what side does he turn? Because the energy, the ability for a person to nullify himself, it flows forth from the ability to recognize that which is important. Meaning, where a person assigns importance, that's where he subjugates himself. That to the degree that a person recognizes how important something is, tolad bot nu'ah, there will be born within him the ability shel hitbatlut, to nullify himself klapei oto inyan, vis-a-vis that particular importance. So, if something, whatever a person understands to be particularly important, you'll see that he works, he serves it, he works to it, he bends and conforms his life to that reality, how he perceives it. And the main question when trying to analyze a person is the ability, his ability to recognize what is important. Where does it serve? That need that we have to recognize importance, what has he identified as important in life? Yitachen, it is possible, that before us, Shnei b'nei Adam, you have two guys. One of them, in his regular activity, he is constantly hard at work in the toil of learning Torah. And the second one, he hardly ever opens up a Jewish word. He never looks inside. He's never involved in the activity of learning Torah. However, you will find that with the first person who learns all the time, when does he pause, when does he stop? When a rich person comes in, he affords him great kavod, and he stops what he's doing, and he relates to this very wealthy person. But when another scholar, somebody who has dedicated his life to learning Torah, comes in, ein hu zazmim komo. So his peer who learns Torah, he does not recognize and doesn't give him kavod. But somebody who's very rich, even though he's sitting and learning, mamish, that's all he does. When the rich person comes, he stops what he does, and he affords that person great honor. That's the first person. Okay. Now the second person, ula umatzot. And in contrast to this, motzim anu etz al sheni, we find regarding the second individual, in the opportunities that he has to meet with somebody who actually learns Torah, there overcomes him a relating of great importance and subjugation. Meaning, when this person meets a Talmid Chacham, it is clear that this Talmid Chacham represents the most important thing to him. And he totally subjugates himself to the being of this person who represents the learning of Torah to him. In a case like this, an example like this, Omer Lan Rabbeinu Yonah is telling us, Ki afa pisha b'shkidat halimud, that even though that this first guy was so regularly and deeply involved in the activity of learning Torah, you would think that in terms of the activity, the situation of the first person is so much higher than the second. Mikol makom, nevertheless, Harishon, this first guy, who harbe yoter rachok min Torah, he is much farther from Torah me'asher hasheni, from the second guy, because of the principle of ish lefi mahalala. So he's opening our eyes to this phenomenon that you would think, hey, look, this guy, all he does all day is learn Torah. He doesn't do anything, but he learns Torah. He spends all his time learning Torah. You'd think Torah is really important to him. And yet, when he meets another Talmid Chacham, he doesn't recognize him at all, but you have a guy who's very wealthy. All of a sudden, he wants to know how he can connect to this guy, and meaning he really looks up to this guy. Yeah. The second person did not get to spend all his time learning Torah. However, everything falls. When he meets a Talmid Chacham mamish, he's totally mevat himself. So Rabbeinu Yonah is saying the first guy is much farther away from Torah than the second guy, ironically. Meaning one is a pnimiyut and one is chitzoniyut, okay? You see really what's important to him, okay? Umatzui hu adavar, and it is to be, I'm sorry, one second. V'im koach hakarat hachishivut shel ha'adam, and the power of the recognition of that which is important of the person, it is directed towards Torah. Harei zeh mekarvel Torah. That was what will bring him to Torah. Harbe yoter, much more me'asher guf halimud, the body of the learning. B'li pu'ulato shel koach zeh. So you see that the first guy, he has the activity of learning, but his ability to recognize and hone on that which is important is not active in his relationship to Torah. And the second guy, even though he doesn't have the activity, what he identifies as of super importance, he's connected to the activity of Torah. And is what connects him to Torah much more than the first guy. V'achshav, and now, kisheim omdim be'emtza chayeihem, they're in their middle age, they're in the middle of their life. Na'apochu, it's indeed the opposite. Ki harishon, I'm sorry, I skipped something. Umatzui hu adavar, and it turns out that what is happening here, lirot, we see shnei anashim, two men, ha'omdim be'emtza chayeihem, they're standing in the middle of their life. Ha'echad mehem, the first one of them, Hiktish, he dedicated Shanot Ne'urav the Torah. His youthful years, he dedicated totally to the study of Torah. V'hasheni, and the second one, Hitasek b'Shanot Ne'urav binyanei olam. When it came to his youthful years, he chased issues of the world, temporal concerns. Ve'achshav, and now, Kishem omdim be'emtza chayim, they stand at middle age, halfway through their life. Napachu, it is indeed the opposite. Ki harishon, the first mitcharet, he has great regrets. Al shelo hitasek b'nu'urav b'inyanei ha'olam. This guy who spent all his time learning in yeshiva, and he was in this kollel and that kollel, and he learned by all the gedolim. He has great regrets that he didn't spend that time learning about stock trading and economics and Wall Street and making good investments. Harei Hasheni, v'Hasheni, and the second guy, mitcharet, he has such regret. Al shelo hitasek b'nu'urav b'Torah, that all he did, right, that he, whatever his activities were in the first half of his life, they were not involved in Torah learning. Harei Hasheni karav harbe yoter, in terms of his aspirations and his evaluations, right? He is much closer, harbe yoser leTorah, much closer to Torah Ma'asher Rishon from the first guy. Afapi, even though Sha'arishon baki b'Shas, the first guy, he's a total expert when it comes to Shas. V'Hasheni ein yodeh klum, and the second guy, he can't quote you a pasuk. However, the second guy is closer to Torah. Ish lefi mahalalo, each person, their actual standing in reality is according to what they praise. Koach hakarat hachashivut, the ability to recognize that innate ability that you have to seek out and value that which is important. Hanimsa ba'adam, that this ability that is to be found in the person. Hu hakoach, that is the faculty. Asher Rabbeinu Yonah kore oto koach hahil. Rabbeinu Yonah calls it koach hahil, the ability to praise. That's what we're referring to here. Okay? The hilula shel adam, because the praise of a person, meaning the praise that a person gives, eino ela bitui, it is only an expression, a personal articulation, la'karat ha'chashivut, to that which he values and estimates to be important, shel oto adam, of that particular individual, ish lefi mahalalo, a man according to that which he praises. Okay. Should we go weiter?
Yeah.
Okay. Kol hadvarim halalu, all these words, amurim heim ba'adam, they're said regarding a human, she'etzem koach hakirut hachashivut, mutba hu bo kahagam. We're talking about somebody who this ability that he has to recognize what's important and to praise it, meaning to make it the single importance in his life, right? That we're all talking about, this is all under the condition that it is active in a healthy way, that a person has a healthy nature when it comes to this. Ela shabechina hi im koach zeh poal hu b'makom haray u b'kivan haray. So we hope that an individual is using this ability that they have, focused in the right way, and connecting him to the right things. Aval haemet. In truth, however, he ki b'mivchan zeh shel ish lefi mahalalo nechlelet hi she'ela mukdamet l'she'ela hana. So the Pachad Yitzchok wants to explain to us that underneath this is another important foundation that we have to discuss in order to make sure that this koach hahilul that somebody has is actually working correctly. Okay? Meaning even under the first thing we established, we discussed, we explained, we showed what this koach hahilul is, but now we want to reveal that there's something underlying that koach hahilul in a human being that determines whether he's using that koach hahilul properly or not. Ki aleinu ladat, because it is upon us to know the ability that one has to recognize that which is truly important. Nimtza b'nefesh hitnakdut gedola. A person naturally has in their nefesh a force to oppose that which is important. Meaning people naturally have a reflex also to fight against that which is propped up. Anything that's presented as important, a person will have a need. There is somehow, we have to talk about, sometimes you find this need to knock it down, to give it some sort of, what's that word when you want to stand down something or fight it? Okay. To be contra to something, to be anti-something. Okay. Right, yes. Okay, so there's a need somehow, there's a human need that we're going to talk about now to actually oppose that which is being propped up before you as important. So, yesh ba b'nafsho shel adam netiya charifa lezilzul. It's also to be found in man, in his nefesh, that he has a very, very strong impulse, or reflex rather, to make small something, to be mizalzel, to ridicule something, or to belittle something and rob it of its significance, which is, meaning a person has a need to subjugate himself to that which he identifies as important, but at the same time he also has a natural ability, anything that's prompted as important, he's seeking why that which presents itself as important is not really important. So you have to make sure that these things don't work at cross purposes inside of you. Right? Lu'umat koach hakarat hachashivut. In contrast to this ability that you have to actually recognize, identify that which is important in life in order that you can serve it, nimtzahu benefesh mahalach she'ena rotza lispal shum chashivus. A person can actually never get there because he's fallen prey to a natural ability that he has to degrade things, and he will be taken over by an approach that he does not want to suffer any sort of grand importance over him. Ubeziluta nichale, and it is more pleasant for him to go through life with a path of zilzul. Meaning a guy who's going around mocking things, right? He's shooting down the things that would prey on him, that claim to be important, that he feels are not important at all, and he wants to lessen their hold of him in reality, right? Shmo shel hakoach hazeh, the name of this force, hamit paretz b'chazaka, that bursts forth with great strength, lahavkiat atzmo miyadeh shel hachashivut, to save oneself from the hands, the dreaded hands of importance, of anything that would be important. Hu leitzanut. So mockery is the need for somebody to wrestle free from the threat of something important, and you can neuter that or render impotent that ability, that threat, by robbing it of its perceived importance through mockery. So somebody feels threatened, they have to subjugate themselves against a reality which states of itself, it presents itself of great importance, of great magnitude, of great worth. So we devalue it, and therefore we escape, we are free from the clutches of that reality. And that is called mockery.
But you're suggesting that subconsciously they feel that it is important?
Meaning it's anything that claims to, it's only the things that claim to be important that need to be mocked. What am I doing by mocking them? Why do I need to mock them? Because they're threatening. And that's how I neutralize them, by mocking them.
But
the need to mock is the need for a person to feel free from the claims of any importance in life that demand of him something. He doesn't want to be beholden to any greater reality. And his modus operandi for effectively being free is by using mockery to neutralize that.
So can we say it like this, that if your neshama is telling you that something's important, but your heart wants to free yourself from that, you mock it. Would that be the right? Not
always, because something could be actually really, really false and claim, and also trigger your need to mock it. Meaning it's not your neshama that recognize. Meaning it could be what you're saying is true, but that's not the formula. That's a specific meaning. The way you're formulating it, it's always bad.
Right.
That's not true. Meaning, you have an instinct, you see something wrong, and you have an instinct, and everybody's under the hold of the spell, and you have an instinct to use mockery to release people. So, Chazal will tell you, unless, for whatever reason, unless it's Avodah Zarah, you can't do that. But the truth is, your impulse, meaning you want to show how ridiculous, meaning a political cartoon. A political cartoon is often very true, right? But it's mockery.
Mm-hmm.
So, where does the mockery come, the need to mock, is anything that's threatening you as, it could be not true. It could be a false, meaning your mockery could be justified. But we're still saying, okay, meaning let's wait for a second, okay? Meaning what happens here? Midat haleitzanuta atzmit, the actual characteristic of mockery, where it is to be found, how it is found in the nefesh. At its root, in yana, its whole thing, its whole MO, its modus operandi, is limtso et apirtso bechol binyan. It looks for the cracks in every structure, shel chashivut, that an important structure, al menat, in order, listor et kol binyan. It finds the whatever pigam or crack in that building and exploits it to undo the whole building. Mitocha shel pirtzazu, through this crack or this hole in that building. Now, that could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. Sometimes the building is good, and sometimes the building is no good. And you could show from the rot, you can undo the whole building. But sometimes the building is good, and just because you're gonna lie and undermine the whole building because of one thing, right? So remember, we also, Chazal told us this is only appropriate in Avodah Zarah. Now we're talking in general, okay? Zeh l'umat zeh. So you see, this power that we have is actually the exact opposite of this ability to recognize the good and subjugate. Meaning, shi'ifato shel koach hahilo. This koach hahilo that we talked about before, it's the desire, right? It's nature. It's hi laharbot chashivut ba'olam. It's to find and build up. It's to identify, really, where things are important in the world,
right?
And to make those important things stand, right? Uleumato, and in contrast, shi'ifato shel koach haleitzanut, the need for mockery. The characteristic of mockery, is to actually find where things are not important and to show how they're not important in the world. Right? V'nimtza, that's why I really believe that, like, all these, we grew up not really questioning, these, the comedians and the sketch comics that are always making fun of things, and we say, it's like political cartoons that has a value. But the truth is, when that is your modus operandi, you're going to run out of things. Meaning, you're not using it judiciously. That's just a mode. So you're just going to be doing that about everything.
Right. And
it's bound to undermine me. When you're a hammer, everything's a nail. And when you're a mocker, all you're going to do is rob things of its significance. You're going to destroy the world that way. So I remember, I was a kid, and I had a friend who was really into Monty Python. And we used to, he exposed me to the humor of Monty Python, and I thought, oh, this is sophisticated, this is intelligent. I mean, I don't think it was even my early teens yet. No, I was after Bar Mitzvah, yeah. But then I remember watching a particular film of theirs, and it was clever and brilliant, and it was a scene in the life of Brian where they're sitting around going, yeah, what have the Romans ever done for us? And I realized, you know what? I don't like them at all, because you can use mockery for anything. And it doesn't tell you what's really proper in life and what's not. But I realized that their modus operandi is leitzanut, and that's Amalek, and that is something that I have to stay away from.
Right.
So with all, what I'm saying is, at some point, it is not an approach through life. Okay? Oh, great. V'nimtza, and it turns out, ki hamivchan hazeh, this test to see who a person is, shel ish lefi mahalalo, that a person is according to that which he praises, mitpashethu ben shtei nekudot misuyamot. It is a continuum that expands between two certain points. Hanakuda harishon, one point, the first point is matzavo shel adam, the state of the person, b'machloket zo sheben koach hahilo ben koach haleitzanot. Where is this person vis-a-vis the two different warring characteristics abilities that he has? One is to knock down importance, and the other is to identify importance. V'hanakuda shniya, and the second point, he be'im timtza lomar shal nakuda harishona. Dahainu, im timtza lomar shebil melchama zu sheben koach hahilo ben koach haleitzanot. Natzach koach hahilo mikol makom makati yeshkan shaila koach hahilo be'ezeh shetach hupo. So he says like this. He just said two things. In order to identify a person through what they praise, the first thing has to be is their power of praise operational, or is it being mitigated by their need to mock things? Once we know that indeed they're not a mocker, but somebody who praises, then we can determine who they are based on their praise. But first, in order to get to that point, he has to be somebody who identifies his ability to mock things does not preclude him from identifying the importance in life and therefore praising things. Okay? Okay. So, vihine.
In other words, Amalek can't pray. Amalek can never praise. You're saying.
Let's see where we go. Okay. Vihine, and behold, im na'amid lefaninu et hashela. Let's stand before ourselves the question. Mahu hamakom asher bo himtzi ha'adam et chashivut hayoter gdola l'sheker hayoter gdola. Where does a person place? Give me a situation where a person ascribes the greatest significance and the greatest worth to the greatest lie? Where do you have the greatest misplacement of projection of importance on the thing that is least important? Right?
Maybe the snake.
Bli safek, without a doubt, shehatshuva al zeh, the answer to this, tihi, avodat ililim, the worship of false gods. The ultimate, right, the power of praise is where a person totally subjugates himself, where he identifies something important, and he gives himself over to the thing. Where can a person misplace that the most? By empty lies, right? A person totally subjugates his life to the service of a complete false power, right? Right? One of the things Chazal say, they say, avodas. Why do we call them Elohim Acherim? Other gods, other powers. So one of the Pshatim Chazal say, or we say Avodah Zarah, foreign service. So people think Avodah Zarah meaning foreign to Judaism. Don't bring that Avodah Zarah from outside into here. No, it's Acherim, they're Elohim Acherim, because they're Acherim L'Ba'aleim. They're strangers to L'Ovdeim, to those that serve them. I mean, they don't recognize. You're investing all this, it doesn't recognize you. It's not reality, there's no returns. Here's a guy, he's killing himself for something, it doesn't recognize him, right? That's Avodah Zarah. Anytime you invest in a shekel, right, you're giving from your God-invested vitality, and you're fueling into absolute nothingness, right? That's the biggest lie. So where is a person misplacing his koach hilul the most? Avodah Zarah. And that's why, perhaps, we'll see, I'm going to pause here because our beloved Shulem Tanji Shlita is here, but we'll see that the only place the Chazal say that it's appropriate to use mockery is specifically against Avodah Zarah, because there, if a person's using his Koach HaHillel on Avodah Salilim, we resort to the Leit Tzanut to rob a person, right, to rob that of that significance. We'll get to it, and we'll talk about Amalek further. Be'ezrat Hashem, we're wishing everybody a tremendous v'nahapachu. Baruch Hashem li'olam, amen v'amen.
Thank you.